At the end of the 19th century, photography became a vital tool for social documentation, reaching into the everyday life of the American frontier. Among portraits of streets and interiors, women who sold sex appeared, posing for the camera. By facing the lens in their own spaces, they revealed glimpses of routines, negotiations, and silences of an invisible trade. In the 1870s, borax mining changed transportation in Death Valley. To move the mineral across the Great Basin, new solutions had to be created. Caravans emerged. Each convoy was guided by 20 mules, capable of enduring long journeys. This way, borax crossed the desert and reached processing centers, driving work and commerce. In the photo, Black Elk appears on the left, highlighted as a key figure in two decisive moments in U.S. history. In 1876, he was at the Battle of Little Bighorn, the famous clash between the U.S. Army and Great Plains tribes, including the Lakota Sioux, of which he was a part. His presence symbolizes the native voice in times of conflict. Quanah Parker rose as a decisive voice for the Comanches. Son of Cynthia Ann, a white girl taken as a child and raised among them, he grew up between two worlds. At the hardest turning point for his people, he assumed leadership and led the resistance against buffalo hunters whose expansion was eroding the land and threatening the way of life that sustained the nation. In the photo, two women pose with elegance in the ornate bedroom of a brothel in Miles, Montana. The setting suggests luxury and silence, while the town, then with about 1,000 residents, already carried an uncomfortable reputation. According to a local judge, it was a place marked by moral decay and the absence of law and order, a portrait that challenges the viewer. In the photo, a cowboy from Caldwell, Kansas, appears in an outfit shaped by his work and the environment he lived in. Every piece had a purpose. The hat faced the weather, the boots kept his step steady, and over his pants were chaps, protecting his legs during long rides and cattle work. Function and environment combined to explain his way of dressing. Pointed out as the last portrait of George Armstrong Custer, this photo shows a soldier at ease in front of the lens. Throughout his life, he posed more than 150 times. This shot, however, was taken 2 months before a decisive chapter in U.S. history, the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. In the 1850s, the ambrotype, an image on glass plate and cheaper in cost, began replacing daguerreotypes, then the standard in photography. Little is known about the man in this ambrotype, but his steady gaze and the suggested setting spark the imagination. The portrait ended up being recognized as an emblematic image of the American Old West. In the middle of a journey through Greenwood County, Kansas, a group of pioneers took a break and gathered around a covered wagon. Between quiet laughs and simple dishes, the outdoor meal restored their strength. The wagon, a road companion, carried supplies and dreams, indispensable for those traveling far in search of land and a future. Joella Irwin made her mark at the start of the 20th century in rodeos. While women were breaking ground in arenas dominated by men, she entered the competitions and never stopped. She competed in several events, showed skill and cool nerves, and became a reference point. Her presence proved that cowgirls had a place at the top and helped change the rules of the game. In 1884, a cabinet card recorded a scene at the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona, typical of the photographic style of the time. The portrait gained importance when it was identified as the first known image of Geronimo, the Apache leader. From then on, his figure crossed borders and decades, becoming fixed in popular imagination as a historical and cultural reference. Jesse James became famous in the Old West as the most recognizable face of the James Younger Gang. Charismatic and calculating, he led bank, train, and stagecoach robberies, entering popular imagination as a bold outlaw. His story, however, ended abruptly in 1882 when he was killed by a partner seeking a reward. The myth outlived his fall. A striking figure in westward expansion, Kit Carson lived among trails and dangers. He worked as a fur trapper, explorer, and mountain man, gaining fame for the expeditions he opened. His reputation grew when he guided John Pathfinder Fremont, a role that cemented him as a key figure in the journeys that mapped American territory. Taken around 1880, this photograph brings together people still unidentified. Researchers suggest the man standing might be John Kinney. The theory gains weight when we remember that, in 1875, he stood out as the leader of a robbery gang active in southern New Mexico, leaving a trail that still echoes in frontier memory. At the end of the Old West, Pearl Hart became famous in 1899 for one of the last stagecoach robberies. The episode not only defied authorities, but also stirred national curiosity and echoed in the press. When Cosmopolitan magazine spread her story, her name crossed borders and she became a figure of national interest. At 15, Rose Dunn, the Rose of Cimarron, entered Western folklore. In 1895, in the small town of Ingalls in what was then Oklahoma Territory, a shootout broke out in the streets. In the chaos, she chose to help her boyfriend, a famous outlaw trapped in crossfire between police and criminals, a gesture that sealed her fame. Since then, her name has lived on in local stories. Texas. John Slaughter left his mark on U.S. history. He rose to prominence as a Texas Ranger during the Civil War, and when the conflict ended, he moved west to raise cattle. He set his final ranch near Douglas, Arizona. A photo from 1885 captures this stage, a portrait that crystallizes his role and the weight of his actions at that time. Olive Oatman's life was marked by resilience and adaptation. After being captured by the Mojave, she lived with the tribe and, as part of her integration, received a blue tattoo on her chin. Made with cactus ink, the mark was part of a ritual that, in Mojave belief, guaranteed a peaceful passage into the afterlife. Symbols of law in Texas, the Texas Rangers were born from the earliest settlements. In 1823, Stephen Austin organized settler patrols. Official recognition came in 1835. Over the decades, they became known for capturing criminals and guarding borders, maintaining regional security, and helping shape the state's history. A recently found photograph reveals a rarely seen scene. A woman, possibly a cattle rancher, posing in the harsh landscape of the Old West. The discovery wasn't part of planned research. Mark Lee Gardner stumbled upon the image while browsing an antique shop in Missouri, bringing to light a forgotten fragment of stories still waiting to be told. Tiburcio Vasquez became a notorious name in the Hispanic Old West. For nearly 20 years, he followed paths of crime with thefts, robberies, and schemes. A photo attributed to 1865 boosted his fame and myth, not just for his actions, but also for his skill at dodging the law and the influence he carried. His figure crossed newspapers and saloons, fueling stories that still echo. At the height of the Old West, cowboys left the plains for another kind of arena, the photo studio. Between cattle drives, they would step in wearing hats, boots, and spurs, insisting on posing in their work attire. Beyond the dust of the trails, they fixed their identity and their trade on film. They wanted to be remembered as they worked, not as saloon showpieces. Bill Doolin, feared in Oklahoma Territory, became the #1 target as the bounty for his capture grew. In August 1896, the chase ended. Surrounded by U.S. Marshal Heck Thomas, he fell after being hit by about 20 shots. That's how the career of the outlaw who defied order and fired up public imagination came to an end. At the funerals of Tom and Frank McClory and Billy Clanton, the processions carried a blunt notice. Murdered in the streets of Tombstone? The phrase spread among coffins and booed hats, recalling the 1881 gunfight at the OK Corral, leaving the town suspended between grief, outrage, and questions of justice. The line became epitaph and accusation, echoing beyond the cemetery. Between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Kate Rockwell brought stage and light to Alaska's mining camps. She sang and danced the hits of the time, winning over tired audiences. Her performances had energy and presence. She almost always appeared in red chiffon dresses, a signature style that brought sparkle to the harsh landscapes of the territory. In 1865, a photograph shows Wild Bill Hickok away from his showman image. Without the adornments that marked other portraits, he appears in everyday clothes, showing who he was beyond the legend. The straightforward shot points to his personal taste and how he chose to present himself in the West of that time. Without the pose, the legend becomes a man, and history defines itself. In 1876, at the height of the great cattle drives, a photo taken in Dodge City, Kansas, captured Bat Masterson alongside Wyatt Earp. The portrait brought together two lawmen who left their mark on the Old West and suggested the strength of a partnership that helped shape a decisive period in U.S. history. In that scene, the past became witness.